The House Rules Committee held a hearing on the Inflation Reduction Act on Wednesday. The massive bill, touted by many on the left as the best legislation ever passed to combat climate change, got 0 votes from Senate Republicans, but passed with the tie-breaking vote of Vice President Kamala Harris. Congresswoman Mayor Gay Scanlon praised the legislation during Wednesday's hearing, saying it is necessary action, as climate change is, quote, causing an existential threat to our nation and our children.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like Mr. Raskin, I too am very excited by this legislation to see a bill that's going to deal with the issues that my constituents are most concerned about: medical costs, the inflationary impact of the deficit, which went way up after the reconciliation bill passed by the Republicans in 2017, the ability for Congress to finally close some of these tax loopholes that are allowing the wealthiest among us and corporations to not pay their fair share, and to finally take substantive action on the climate issues, which are posing an existential threat to our nation and our children. So I'm very excited about all of the provisions in this bill. Mr. Pallone, today I had occasion to meet with some constituents, some members of the Delta sorority. We're doing some voter registration at a local health clinic, and one of the Deltas was telling me she's 89. Her husband is 86, I believe, and they had to fill some prescriptions, 4 prescriptions yesterday, and they had to pay $200 out of pocket, which was a lot for them. They're going to have to pay that again before the end of the month. So how is this bill going to help folks like my constituents, older Americans who are on Medicare and need to maintain their prescriptions in order to stay healthy?
Well, I don't know how much detail you want, but I mean, basically what it says is that the Secretary of Health and Human Services is required to negotiate drug prices on the highest cost single source drugs in Medicare that have been on the market for a long time. And it establishes the maximum price the secretary can negotiate based on whether or not these are the drugs that have cost the most, and whether prices have gone up the most. And so I do believe the most important part of this is that once we start negotiating prices for drugs, and we will go after the ones that are, have the biggest price increases, they'll see the actual prices, come down significantly, because we pay a lot more for these drugs in the United States than they do in all these other countries, whatever, Japan, France, Australia, than they do in all of the other developed countries. But also this cap on Medicare Part D out-of-pocket drug spending at $2,000 a year is significant. A lot of people say, oh, $2,000 a year, but they don't realize that many seniors pay a lot more, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a year out of pocket. And so that's significant. And then it requires the drug manufacturers to pay a rebate to Medicare if they increase their prices faster than the rate of inflation. And they have been doing that significantly, particularly during this COVID period. So I think that although the rebate is to the government, they're not going to want to pay a rebate to the government. So that's going to be a factor. I mean, those are the 3 most important things, other than that, if they're taking insulin, the $35 cap on insulin per month. Those are the key.
Thank you. Yeah, and even if that $200 they had to pay was on a monthly basis, that's $2,400, right, annually?
Sure.
So they're going to see at least $400 in reduction.
And a lot of seniors take multiple drugs, not just one. They'll take 4, 5, 6, depending on the need.
And am I also correct that extending the Affordable Care Act subsidies allowed an additional 13 million people to get coverage? And so we're extending those subsidies for 3 more years?
Yes. So when we did the American Rescue Plan, we had enhanced subsidies at every level, because, as you pay a certain amount depending upon your income, and the rest is subsidized. All those were significantly increased for the years 2021 and 2021 and 2022, And then for the first time, we also provided some subsidy if your income was above 400% of poverty, which, in a state like mine in New Jersey, if you have a family of four, you can easily get above that 400%, right? It's at middle class, really, at that point. So that is extended for the next 3 years. So for 23, 24, and 25. And we now have the highest, as a result of that enhanced subsidy over the last 2 years during the Biden administration, the level of people that are uninsured is at an all-time low. And we want that to continue.
That's amazing. Mr. Byer, do you have the IRS issues in your bucket? Do I have that right?
Among others, yes, I do. Very good.
Among others. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's been really interesting as this bill has worked its way through committees, first in the House and then in the Senate, certainly all of us over the last few years have had to deal with complaints about the IRS not being able to process tax returns in a timely fashion, not being able to get people their stimulus checks. So I've learned over that time that that it's seriously underfunded and understaffed to do its job, and also that we're anticipating tens of thousands of IRS agents to retire in 2 years. So we essentially have a shop that needs to be propped. But I've also been kind of stunned to learn about the fact that the IRS is still operating on a computer system, the COBOL system, which was antique, I think, when I was in college. So can you tell us a little bit about how the investments that this act is going to can help the IRS do its job so it brings in dollars that people, particularly rich people and rich corporations, owe, so that we can fund the government in a way that it benefits everybody?
Thank you for framing the issue so very well, and for giving us a chance to point out again that so many of the ways it's been characterized by our Republican friends are just not fair or accurate. Let's begin with the fact that the greatest expectation is that the IRS may, with this investment, get back to the employment level they had in 2010, 12 years ago. Let's also add to the fact that there's nothing wrong with having IRS staff become increasingly efficient over the years, so perhaps they could deal with twice as many claims with fewer people, but there was no IT improvement over those years as they were starved. So I don't know anybody that's taught COBOL for 20 or 25 years. So we're really running into the danger of not only an antiquated system, but a system that few people around left still to even program or improve. My friend from Missouri said that only 4% is dedicated to direct customer service. That may be technically right, but remember, those are the taxpayer advocates. Most of the taxpayer folks are processors. They don't have direct customer service. They're going to try to deal with those 10 million backlog of individual IRS claims that are sitting in IRS cafeterias around the country. By the way, too, a significant part of that $80 billion will be spent on improving the computer systems, the IT, which, by the way, makes the processors and the customer service agents that much more efficient. Hopefully the backlog in terms of return telephone calls or just answered telephone calls will go way, way down because of this investment. And what we have, what we have to continue to say is 87,000 new auditors, 87,000 new agents. It just isn't happening. One of my friends on the other side said, how many billionaires are there? Only 700. However, there are 20.2 million millionaires in America. And that millionaire is 1 million to 999 million. So there are going to be many, many people, way more than 700, who are in the category of underreporting their income and where an audit actually makes sense. Audits barely fell for people making less than $200,000. They plummeted for people making more than $1 million a year. That will perhaps be rectified with this IRS investment.
And I understand that a lot of the impetus for the investment is to deal with that. Certainly millionaires and billionaires are not filling out their income tax forms themselves. They have armies of people helping them try to evade taxes. So I think this is a wise investment for the country, particularly, I mean, we've got some prime examples of folks who claim to have been under audit for years and years. Otherwise, they would have revealed their tax returns. So I think this is a good investment.
Charlie Rosati, who had been one of the IRS commissioners, hopefully again not one of the so-called corrupt IRS commissioners referred to by an earlier friend, that those of us with W-2 incomes and 1099 incomes, and most of the people on this call, all of us I hope, report 99% of our income. But those that have lots of other passive income sources, stocks and bonds, real estate and the like, perhaps as little as 50% of that is reported. And so that's where the huge tax audit, the unpaid but due taxes, the fair tax share is missed out, and why a stronger IRS can help collect that.
Thank you. And the last thing, as I understand it, well, so we know that our national deficit ballooned following the 2017 Republican tax cut bill. How is this bill supposed to help our national deficit? It brings it down, doesn't it?
It brings it down quite a bit. And it's really the first down payment on that we've had structurally in quite a long time. But let's also note that I just read yesterday that the deficit's down, I believe, $1.72 trillion just from last year. We're making an enormous progress from the deficit that was built up in the last years of the Trump administration because of the COVID crisis. And Democrats and Republicans together voted for those COVID relief bills that pushed it up. But we're moving strongly in the right direction, and now for the first time, we're actually making a significant down payment on it.
Thank you. And of course, the largest tranche of spending in this bill does have to do with crime reduction and making the types of investment that are so important. Mr. Yarmuth, if you could just highlight, what do you think is the most important climate piece here?
Well, again, I think, thank you for the question. I think the most important thing is that we are changing the incentive structure of the government in order to put us in a certain direction. And the aggregate effect of this, both in terms of promoting electric vehicles, renewable energy, all of these things, mitigation techniques, resiliency, all are going to push us in the direction where a variety of expert organizations have said will help us meet our goal of reducing carbon emissions by 40% by 2030. That's an enormous amount of progress to be made in 8 years. And again, we've never even approached this kind of government initiative to deal not just with climate change, but also to set us on an energy efficient economy that will save consumers a lot of money. And if I can just add one thing, I've been chomping at the bit a little bit. Ranking Member Smith, again, scare tactics, threw up this notion of 700,000 additional audits being done of this. There are 150 million individual tax returns filed in the country every year. 150 million. So you're talking about an additional 0.5% of audits, where we know that hundreds of billions of dollars of money that is owed but not paid and is out there for us to capture. And the idea that we are inconveniencing anybody or we're on some kind of assault on America's middle class because we're going to increase audits by 0.5% is just ludicrous.
Thank you. Thank all of you for your testimony. I mean, I'm really looking forward to voting for this bill because I think it does address some of the most pressing problems for our constituents in our country. The high cost of healthcare, the deficits that drive inflation, the climate change issues that are so front of mind, particularly for our young people. So, maybe not everything we want is in here, but I think it's a great bill, and I'm looking forward to voting on it on Friday. And I yield back.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to